Hello and welcome to NEWSDAY, your number one resource for the entire week's worth of VR news. Naturally, some weeks are better than others in terms of VR news. This week, however, is one that you really don't want to miss. Some pretty big stuff happened, from the biggest month of growth ever for VR to some pretty solid information on the next Oculus headset. Let's just get right into the news. I want to start off with something kind of funny. These are two Forbes articles posted within 24 hours of each other. From Barry Collins, VR headsets are dying a lonely death, and 22 hours later from Joe Parlock in Stop Saying Virtual Reality is Dying. Now, I'm pretty used to seeing opposing news outlets having conflicting thoughts on current events, and even some pretty harsh verbal stabs being used between journalists, but I don't think I've seen a place like Forbes post two articles within a day of each other that convey actual completely different sentiments. Barry Collins in the VR headsets are dying a lonely death article complains that only 1 in 50 people using Steam VR have a VR headset connected, according to figures released by Valve, and that before April, the entire Steam VR community made up less than 1.5% of the overall Steam user base. Colin then uses the fact that Valve recently dropped Steam VR support for macOS as more evidence that VR is dying. Yeah, because Valve dropping support for a platform whose hardware could, for one, hardly run VR, but two, barely had any games for it in the first place, is a sign that VR is dying. It's estimated that 0.0008% of VR users were using macOS. All of my own rebuttals were made clear in the arguments made by Joe Parlock in his article, though. To back up his claims, he states the info that we already know. Half-Life Alyx has likely sold more than 1 million copies in its first month, which is pretty incredible for any game, let alone a VR game. And that this most recent calendar month has been one of the biggest months of growth for VR in general. Parlock's closing statements are as follows, quote, "VR is a hobby that is adjacent to mainstream gaming, and it doesn't need to meet arbitrary goals comparative to flat gaming to be considered successful. Please stop saying VR is dying," end quote. I should also point out that these articles were written by Forbes contributors, people that write articles for Forbes but aren't necessarily associated with the platform. Still, the smackdown that Joe put on Barry was an entertaining sight. VR ain't going anywhere, and stop saying it's dead. Please. If you need numbers to back up that claim, 950,000 more headsets were used on Steam in April than in March. Of course, Half-Life Alyx was released, which obviously helps, but that's still no number to scoff at. Looking at this graph, I think it's pretty clear what growth like this really means. The old 1% of Steam users have VR sentiment is dead. We're now at almost 2%, and that might sound a little comical, but a 1% increase in a user base 95 million strong is a gigantic jump in adoption. But now we've got some really interesting news regarding the new headset from Oculus that has had a cloud of rumors circulating it recently. You may have heard of the Oculus Del Mar, the codename of the new headset that has been leaked accidentally by Oculus themselves, along with the codename Jedi controller. Other than a few details found in another leak of a hardware driver, not much has been said on the topic, that is, until now. According to Bloomberg, Oculus is right now building a Quest successor that is smaller, has a higher refresh rate, and is lighter as well. Confirmed along with the smaller form factor are redesigned controllers, which matches the leaks that we've previously gotten regarding the Jedi controller. According to Bloomberg, the headset was slated to release at the end of 2020, likely to be released or launched at Oculus's event called OC7. And while the announcement may still take place at the event, it's very possible that shipping may be delayed until 2021. Now, in case you're skeptical here, Bloomberg actually has a decent reputation in terms of Oculus and Facebook leaks. For example, they leaked the entire Oculus Go project and price months before it was even announced and released. Here are some more precise details on the new headset. The report says that the headset may be 20% lighter and 15% smaller in total size. And in case you like the idea of high refresh rate displays like the Valve Index has, Bloomberg says that Facebook has been testing 120Hz displays for this new headset. This report does not say anything about a new chip, however, but I would assume that the new Quest would have the more powerful XR2 that was recently released that provides nearly twice the performance over the older Snapdragon 835 that the Quest currently has. It's also said in the report that while in standalone mode, the headset will likely limit itself to 90 Hz for battery reasons, but if this headset has anything similar to the Oculus Link to play PC games, the 120 Hz option would likely be unlocked. This has some massive implications. So far, the only headset on the market capable of high refresh rates are the Index and some various Pimax headsets. If Oculus does bring a headset to market with a high refresh rate, then high refresh rate headsets will become the industry standard, which after using my Index for almost a year now, I think is a really good idea. There's more though. Oculus is looking to change up the materials used on the headset as well as change the head strap for a different system entirely. According to Bloomberg, they will move from a Velcro system that we've seen for years to an elastic system, as well as removing the fabric on the side of the headsets. This is both for a cost-saving measurement, lowering the manufacturing cost per headset, as well as a tactic to increase the production rate. Another gigantic leak for the headset could be an increased field of view. One thing I really noticed going from my Index back to the Quest is the obviously more narrow field of view that I get on the Quest, but that could be a thing of the past as well. At OC6, Oculus showed off a set of lenses that could achieve a 20% wider field of view while being smaller than the current lenses used in the Quest. We already heard earlier that weight and size are being reduced, and it's a logical deduction that FOV would also be a place where improvements are being made, especially if Oculus already has a superior lens that they've been making for years. And finally, the controllers. Bloomberg does confirm my suspicions that this new controller with all their new features and new design will be backwards compatible with the existing Oculus Quest. So you do have some sort of upgrade path, which brings me to my conclusion here. Should you wait to buy a headset if you're in the market? Should you sell yours while you still can? I'll get into that right after a meme break! Look, Oculus, new headset, new you, right? You could increase FOV, comfort, everything. But what I really want improved is the audio quality, and you really had it down back in the CV1 days. I mean, the market's making it clear. Just look at this headset. It's literally all headphone. Get with the times. And now, back to the news. Actually, more like my thoughts here. I can imagine that a lot of people are wondering if they should ditch their Quest or Rift S while it still has value, or some people are wondering if they should just wait to buy one at all. And here's what I gotta say. There is no way Oculus will be abandoning either the Rift S or Quest platform right now. We've already seen in the report that the new controller will be compatible with both, so you do have an upgrade path. If this is the supposed Del Mar with 120 Hz refresh rate, wider field of view, smaller, lighter, and just better overall, it's probably going to be supported alongside the Quest and Rift S. Of course, it's going to be better, but just like how I can play the exact same game on my original Oculus Rift CV1 as I can on my Valve Index, playing PSVR games is going to be no different. You'll just have a better experience on the new headset. Your Quest and Rift S are not going to be deemed completely obsolete because of a newly released headset. Now, in terms of standalone experiences, if the new headset does in fact have the XR2 chip, which is significantly more powerful, I can imagine that games will release for it that'll take advantage of the new chip in ways that the Snapdragon 835 on the Quest just can't. But I still don't think you'll be missing out on any new releases, at least not right away. If Oculus cuts off backwards and forward support for software, it'll only be shooting their own already limited software catalog in the foot. It just wouldn't make sense for Oculus to make their successful, recently adopted headset obsolete already. If you have a Quest, keep on enjoying it. If you're in the market for a Quest, keep looking for them when they go in stock. You're not going to be left with the useless headset in 8 months. That's what I'm trying to say. And if you have Rift S, practically nothing changes for you. In terms of PSVR function, the new headset will do the exact same thing that yours does now, just better, obviously. We don't know anything on price yet, which should be a major factor when choosing a headset. This could be extremely expensive, or it could be along the same price as the Rift S. We just don't know yet. But of course, I'll keep you updated here every week on anything new as soon as I hear about it. And it kind of makes sense that Oculus and Facebook have been really hunkering down on VR. In a Q1 earnings call, Facebook CFO David Wayner said that revenue mostly from the VR market in Oculus has reached nearly $300 million, an increase of 80% from last year. Back when Facebook purchased Oculus for $2 billion, many definitely questioned the decision. Year-over-year profits were coming slowly, if at all, but Mark Zuckerberg had this to say, quote, "On the virtual reality side, this has always been a long-term vision. Quest has surpassed our expectations. I wish we could make more of them faster during this period." end quote. Of course, Oculus has stuck by VR through thick and thin, and while there are still a lot of business practices employed by Oculus that I really don't like, their contribution to the VR industry has been immeasurable. We wouldn't be where we are today without them, and it's all good news to hear that their VR division is making good year-over-year profits. Doesn't mean I won't continue to push for open platforms and less exclusivity though. A couple things regarding Sony have actually popped up in the VR space in the past week. A new finger tracking prototype controller has been unveiled by Sony researchers, and I gotta say, it looks pretty impressive. Borrowing heavily from the thought process of the knuckles on the index, the prototype uses 62 electrodes to accurately track finger placement along the grip. Of course, Sony is a big company with a lot of different components in it, so this could be completely unrelated to a new PSVR controller. But in a statement by the researchers, VR was specifically mentioned. Quote, "We also implemented real-time interactive applications using the prototype, and we demonstrated the possibility of intuitive interaction using fingers in a VR application," end quote. Either way, I'm interested in seeing what Sony can do to improve their headsets and controllers in the future. To be completely honest, the current PSVR doesn't hold a candlestick to even the Oculus Quest in terms of capability, and I feel like it's a really bad example of what VR is capable of, especially in 2020. Any improvements are greatly appreciated. Something did surprise me though related to Sony. The entire Star Wars Vader Immortal series is on its way to PSVR this summer. Pretty soon, PCVR and Quest is not the only place to play the game, which is great. Vader Immortal was and is still a great VR game, but I could easily recommend to just about any VR user, especially if you're even close to being a Star Wars fan. And now I could recommend it to PSVR as well. And that's the week's news. No question of the week this week, but still leave your questions. I'll be back at it next week, don't worry. Make sure to stop by in my Twitch stream today. We'll be talking all about Oculus's new headset and its possibilities moving forward. Also, join in my Discord for updated scheduling on that stream, as well as some extended VR conversations. We'll be having a VR chat meetup later this week, and you won't want to miss it. Thank you to all of my Patreon supporters, especially my Omegas like Zimp, Very Evil Shadow, and Benji. I literally couldn't be doing any of this without you. Don't forget to like this video if you loved it, subscribe if you want more of this, and hit that freaking bell if you just can't live without it. Much love, Thrill out.